panel. We've run this a number of times, including here at MAGFest, I think like 3 times. This might be our fourth. Yeah. Third or fourth instance.
Allegedly on fire.
Yes, we light MAGFest on fire every year. So it's if you're into tabletop gaming, good news, you're in the right building and the right panel. If you're not, hopefully we've convinced you to be into it by the end through high charisma rolls. I'll give you kind of a quick heads up. This panel should be entirely Q&A, but it also sometimes ends up being mostly Q&A. We're hoping that you bring some of your questions. Hello, friends.
Hello.
Hello.
God, the entire panel.
We're hoping that you guys bring us some of your questions that you have for your games, whether you are a game master, a game writer, which often is the same thing, what you learn, game designer, even if you're creating your own systems. We have a ton of experience with. We could actually, if you want to leave those doors open, you can.
Leave the doors open.
We have a ton of experience. How much experience, you ask? Well, we'll tell you. My name is Alon. I'm at the Dungeon Meowster. I'm a professional game master. I don't know how long I've been GMing. It's been a while, but I've been doing it professionally for 4 years now. And then I have GM'd. I mean, there was a period of time where I was GMing about 127 games a year is what we figured out for a handful of years. I was GMing mostly for small businesses, mostly breweries in Richmond, as a group called Goblins and Growlers, which I co-funded, where we build inclusive community through tabletop gaming and support local small businesses, and also lower the barrier to entry for Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games that are intimidating to people like me, who would go into a board game store or a game store and be intimidated immediately for no reason, and sometimes for reasons. Yeah. So we co-founded this, and since then, we, besides GMing hundreds of games for hundreds of different people, for hundreds of different characters, and in hundreds of different levels of sobriety, we've also done tons of fundraising. I think we've raised, tens of thousands of dollars, easily tens of thousands of dollars for things from.
Look at the person who's worse with numbers.
From cat charities to and sanctuaries to bail funds to
No Kid Hungry.
No Kid Hungry. I had Noah on a stream. We do a lot of live streams as well. So here at the top, I'm going to say, if you want to follow any of us, Goblins and Growlers, the best way to get to any of us, except for this man right here. So I'm going to let him introduce himself after I tell you that he is one of the most important parts of Goblins and Growlers. He's our lawyer. And not just our lawyer, but a cool lawyer. I'll vouch for him. He's
Thank
cool.
you.
And he has other panels going on, which you should check out after this. But I hope you're all getting your tabletop questions ready. And Noah, what do we need to know about you? Where do we follow you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you nailed it. I'm a lawyer, but I'm a cool lawyer. So I'm a video game lawyer and tabletop lawyer. So it's a real profession. I promise. My mom believes me finally. And so my practice focuses almost entirely on gaming, tabletop, and everything related to gaming, streaming, all that stuff. And so I am G&G's lawyer because I'm also from Richmond, Virginia. Woo! And so we have a lot of fun. And that's really my intro. If you want to find me on places, you can follow me on Twitch, Twitter, and TikTok at my lawyer friend, or on Instagram at my.lawyerfriend. And I also, I want to give a shout out to these guys because, there's not a lot of folks in the nation that really do it as well as they do. And trust me, I know, because I represent most of the other ones.
You could.
Your username. I don't think my mic is on.
Neither of our mics are on.
That's because you weren't here for sound check.
Yeah, you missed sound check. Yeah, you can project because you're professional game masters.
So good at shouting. I was going to say, I thought your username was just for me specifically. I thought you were my lawyer friend.
I mean, I am.
There you go.
So, sidling in on this little love fest, my name is Alex Smith. I own Alpha Comics and Games up in Richmond, Virginia, which is a tabletop and comic book store. I also am the dungeon master for the podcast Quid Pro Roll, which is the one that these two dudes are on. I am also, as of 45 minutes ago, engaged!
Woo!
Congratulations!
Wow.
Specifically to this dude. So.
Whoa! Wow!
So look out for me for the rest of MAGFest being incredibly obnoxious and waving my hand in everyone's face.
It's a good.
Oh, and I've also been a DM for well over a decade and have watched all of my games have some. Oh, hello. Sorry
Your
about
mic is
that, guys.
suddenly on.
Yes.
And have watched all of my games have some level of that guy that I had to address.
Oh my god.
yeah.
Real quick, can we get a hand for Tech Ops?
Yeah, Tech Ops!
Thank you.
Okay, so
Hold on.
Excuse me, sir.
Believe it or not, I can't just say, hey, this is my fiance now, and everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
Well,
you
let
guys
me, let me
are-
ask you
I've
this. Are
considered
you
you guys-
also engaged?
I am also
Oh my
engaged.
God.
wow. That means you guys are the same person. I can just skip over you.
I
That's
like that you
not how
had
that
less
works.
of a response than I
Well,
did.
it's more surprising and exciting when you say it.
That's fair.
So my name is Josh Maltby. I am also one of the co-founders of Goblins and Growlers. I have been DMing since I was like 17, but I started weird. I started with Pokemon Tabletop United
Nerd.
because I didn't want to DM regular games. I wanted to DM weird stuff. So that's kind of where things started out for me. So games tend to get a little strange under my hands, which is great. I love it. I'm
Okay.
about it.
Gotta catch them all.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta catch them all.
Speaking of catch 'em all, let's catch all of these questions. Like I said at the top, Help My Game is on Fire is a Q&A panel where you get to ask professional game masters. Oh, Noah has a podcast coming out.
Yeah,
a
I'm also a
tabletop
professional
podcast. He's a
game
game master
master
as well, not just a lawyer.
Yeah.
But if you have law questions as well, great news. There's a panel for that tomorrow at 6, I think.
It's on the schedule.
It's on the sketty. So if you guys can put up your hands, I'm not wearing glasses, so if you're in the front row, I'm going to be able to see very easily. If not, you can always hold up a thing or a person or whatever.
No,
or
don't
if you're
hold up a
wearing
person.
bright orange,
mind.
that also works.
So perfect. We're going to start right here with a question.
How do you gently explain to a new player that their character doesn't need to secretly be the great-granddaughter of the big evil bad guy?
Ooh.
Oh, so
Okay.
the question is, how do you gently explain to a new player that their character does not need to be the great granddaughter of the BBEG?
So
That's tough.
yeah, I'm gonna unpack this at one level higher, which is a lot of times one of the hardest things to break to a new player, especially if they're creating a level 1 character, is that you don't need to be a really super fleshed out character at level 1. And in fact, it's sometimes better to just not be the general of a destroyed army or the granddaughter of a BBEG who has 10 master's degrees or whatever, because then you have a character arc in front of you where you get to grow and learn and have a hero's journey. But how do you tell somebody not to do that? As a GM, like for me, my first thing is just tell them not to do that. Like I'm a really big proponent of being fairly straightforward. A lot of times the best thing to do is say, hey, I've written this thing, or I haven't in my case, but I've written this adventure and it has these beats that I really want to hit, and I promise you're going to enjoy it more if you just don't do that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to, it's not something I'm going to ask often, but in this instance, hopefully, but in this instance, don't be the granddaughter of the BBG.
I wanted to chime in on that. And if it's a one shot, that's cool. Go for it. And one thing that I would caution that player is to say, hey, that's something that we can discover. Maybe you don't know who your parents are, and you find out that, your parents are actually the kids of the big bad evil guy, and show them, hey, don't start at level 1 with that, but go into exactly the character arc.
Usually what I recommend, because a lot of times the people who start out with like, I am Ebony, Darkness, Dementia, Raven Way, like day 1. Usually they've started out doing like forum role playing or something else where their character is the protagonist of their own story. A lot of ways to work that out is to find out what they specifically want for their character out of being the granddaughter of the BBEG, and then sit with them and find a way that they get the same satisfaction for not upending your entire campaign that you've written. A lot of times you can go, hey, I see that you want to do this. I can't make this work in the story that I've written, but if you tell me some stuff that you really want to get out of this, I can work that into the story beats and we can like sort of build on that instead of starting right out the game with, I have long ebony hair, that is how I got my name, and with eyes like limpid tears, and I look like Amy Lee, and if you don't know who that is, you may get out of here. Yes, I have read My Immortal many times.
Oh my gosh.
She's got it tattooed. It's just all the way.
Just the whole first chapter down my back.
It's going to be the wedding vows.
And then we went to go see Good Charlotte at a Wizard concert.
Oh my God.
So I can expand on that, but I'm wondering if we have other questions we want to get to. No? Everybody good? Okay. So to expand on that, those new players want to feel like that spotlight is on them right out of the gate. And the thing that a lot of people take a little time to get used to is that the spotlight is going to be on everybody at some point, but it is a collaborative storytelling game where you and other people build a story together. And if you can have conversations like that before you start playing, you don't run into quite so many of the like, yeah, I'm playing a ranger because he really likes to be in the woods alone.
Yeah.
It's just him and his wolf.
You're all the grandkids of the BBG. And now we get to find out who's the favorite.
The BBG was Genghis Khan.
That was just the whole plot of Final Fantasy VIII, but okay.
Spoiler.
That game was released in 1998. If you haven't played it yet, I'm sorry to tell you, you've missed the boat on spoiler warnings.
That's fair.
Now you guys know. Spoiler warnings abound. We're going to spoil every 1998 game for you today.
Please don't. I was 7.
Other questions. Put your hands up. If it can be a question as a GM, it can be a question as a player character. We've GM'd hundreds.
You in the back with the yellow hoodie.
Second edition players.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I played second edition for a long time.
So the question was, how do you deal with player characters who are going to try to peel every inch of wallpaper off of your dungeon, really wedge their hands into every nook and cranny,
Break every pot.
locate every treasure chest? I have multiple words for you, but the first one I'm going to start with is mimics.
Yes.
The second one I'm going to start with is wall socket traps.
That's really good.
And then the third one is they're not alone in that dungeon. There are things in there that would like them dead. And some of those things probably are outside the dungeon doing patrols in the woods or whatever. Mm-hmm. They'll be back from behind, and then there'll be the guys that are also in front of them that they need to deal with. Like, there are reasons why you want to get into a dungeon and out of a dungeon very quickly.
I love it.
So I'm probably one of the worst people to answer this question because I'm one of those people who spends hours just making like stupid tiny minutia in my games. But one of the ways that I found to work around it when my players inevitably reach the end of the 7,000 things that I've prepared is have a prepared table that you can just roll on for stuff to be there and put mimics and traps on that table. And honestly, one of the things that you can also do is once they've hit a reasonable amount of like stones to look under, be like, homie, you've looked through everything in this room. You can move on to the next room. It doesn't break the fourth wall to be like anybody who upends an entire room can see when it is upended.
Right.
Unless you break the fourth wall, like something comes through the wall.
So, Jesus.
Jesus comes through the wall.
Oh, yeah. But no, so another thing I like to do in those cases, one, traps, mimics, say, hey, dude, there's nothing else in here. But I also like to typically, one of the things I really like to have sometimes is a DM PC. So a player character that's controlled by the DM that goes in and says, hey, the house is on fire, guys. We gotta go. Something like
Just
that.
Navi.
Yeah.
Just Navi from Ocarina of Time. Hey, listen. Hey, that's a weird cloud over there over Death Mountain.
One of my favorite characters that I've inserted into every single campaign I have is this hedgehog named Toik. And he's a cleric, and he's a librarian. And so he shows up, he can get into every single dungeon because he's tiny and magical. And it allows me to gently tell players, hey, Toik showed up. There's nothing left here.
Not to be dramatic, but I would die for Toik.
Toik is amazing. Toik made an appearance in that stream the other day.
Yeah, he did. Toik raised money for charity for kids.
Yes, he did.
Oh my God.
Toik's awesome.
Yeah, like from a very top level, there's usually like 3 things you can do in that situation. 1 is reward it. 2 is discourage it. And 3 is just, have whether it's you as a GM saying, hey, move on, or there's a fire. Oh my God, the whole room's on fire. Like whatever you want to do to force them to move past it. I feel like those are kind of your 3 easiest ins or outs. If you like having really detailed games, reward it. Make sure that every time that they explore, they get rewarded for exploring. It's just like having a dog. You just give them a treat and they're like, oh my God, you've behaviorally trained me.
That's why I give you plaid cat stickers every time you do something good.
Yeah, Alex gives me plaid cats every time. I'm like, oh my God, I need to do that again. And then we end up just making puns for a whole podcast episode.
I was going to say, I have exclusively seen you deal out plaid cats for really atrociously excellent puns.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's all
Yeah, because I honestly like that behavior.
Yeah, but that's the only thing you encourage.
Yeah, because you guys don't do anything else that's good.
Oh no!
Reward it, discourage it, move on.
I've actually got one more thing to add. Is that one? I did have a player that was like that one time, and I rewarded them by letting them find a bag of holding. However, it was a cursed bag of holding. That anytime they found stuff and put it into it above a certain weight, it started destroying things.
Nice.
So-
It has an auto, like it's cleaned your email. It's
Yeah,
enough.
exactly. It's great. It's like you have reached too much storage.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
it's so nice.
Yeah, that it was really great when it killed their deck of many things.
The only problem you might run into, if that person's an outlier and the rest of the people in your game say, God, I really want to move on and just do this thing, you might just have to talk to that person out of game and say, hey, I know that you really love doing this. Just it doesn't jive with the game that we're playing. Please just be a little bit more pointed on this, and hopefully that helps it all work out.
You
then
get
kill off the
three.
character.
You get 3 investigation rolls.
Yeah.
That's the whole dungeon.
Yeah.
I will let you know what you find.
You have
Yeah.
investigation points.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Heck yeah.
Do
Oh my
we get
God.
Plaid Cat?
I can give you a plaid cat later.
Yeah.
Yes.
Game's no longer on fire.
No, you don't even need to ask.
And the question: do you have one like? I was gonna say you had one like in the chamber.
I do have one.
Yeah.
So there's obviously a lot of memes about players falling in love with NPCs, but what if NPCs don't land and players are just disrespecting them completely? You just say that NPC didn't land and move on, or do you ever have consequences?
Yeah, I'm a big, okay, so I have a different, I know somebody on this panel who has a very different answer from me. I'm fine with killing an NPC. If it doesn't land, if it doesn't achieve my purpose, I take them back to the NPC pile and I throw them on the bodies and I introduce a new one.
Now
This
blue.
NPC was
Yeah.
named Old Yeller.
It doesn't. If it didn't land, especially if I had an NPC for a purpose and it didn't land, I move on to a new one who tries a different way to get the player characters to do my bit, like whatever I want them to do, whether it's a MacGuffin or whatever. So I'm a big thing of like, if it doesn't land, move on. I also feel that way with jokes. I feel that way with everything in my life, actually. Planes, whatever. If it doesn't, you just go to the next one. That's my opinion and my thought to you. I think it keeps your pacing really tight, which is what I really like. And so if it's just not and they're like, fall in love with me. You won't find. Well, maybe you'll fall in love with that guy. He looks better than me.
I can actually attest to how Alon handles stuff like that. And I was just in a campaign where I completely disrespected one of his PCs, and I murdered them twice, brought them back from the dead so I could murder them again, and then brought their ghost back so that I could kill that too. So yeah, he's really good.
And
at
I
that.
moved on. It was a new NPC. Whatever.
Okay.
You murdered him. Murder this guy. I don't know. Eventually, you'll stop murdering guys long enough for me to get whatever I need to get.
It's for the
across.
kids though.
For the kids, for sure.
With very rare exceptions, I will not name the PC until they have established some level of rapport with them, so that if they murder them or like destroy them and they were supposed to be really important, cool, this was some other guy, and now here's the other person. Oh, you like this person more, even though they're exactly the same character? Wonderful, this is their name, and now you may interact with them as if they were important. I'm a big I really structure my NPCs to have their own likes, personalities, dislikes. I treat them very similarly, like in creation, that I would to player characters if I was a player. And I don't mind them dying, but a lot of what I'll do in their structure is how they'll react to the players. There are some NPCs that, like, you can insult them all day and they'll be like, yeah, I am pretty awful. There are other NPCs who will be, like, very insulted and they'll challenge them to a duel and it'll be like this big thing. But if I'm going to be attached to the NPC, I'm very, very judicious or careful where I would put them. And even then, that doesn't guarantee that I can't sometimes you just have to lay them in the boat, send them over the falls, shoot a fire arrow into it, and realize that you can recycle them for other games.
At the end of the day, kill your darlings.
Yeah.
Because it's about the table having fun. Now that does mean you need to also be having fun. So if all of your favorite bits to do at the table are bits where your player characters are like, I'm putting my axe in his head right now, so you stop doing that voice. Then for me, I escalate the comedy factor on those situations because I'm like, well, I like doing this voice though. So in this instance, that's not actually a dude. It's in reality a genie in disguise, and you just put an axe into his head. Shenanigans are about to ensue, friends.
You introduce consequences.
Yeah.
Or what you do is have that spirit infest the weapon that killed him. So now his spirit, his weapon is possessed, and that voice follows him forever.
Keep
That's
that voice.
amazing.
Keep that voice.
And then he's getting rid of that weapon.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options for things you can do. I think at the end of the day, though, just be comfortable when you're creating an NPC, being like, I hope they like this character, but I don't know they're going to like this character.
Right.
Because every time I've been like, this one for sure, they're like, please send him away. He creeps us out.
Well, also, I just want to preface everything as the lawyer up here. When he says kill your darlings, we don't mean like in real life. Like, we're talking about a game, just to be very clear. If you like something in real life, don't kill it.
Thanks, Noah. Keeping us covered.
Murder's bad.
Law says so, and that's the only reason why.
Whoa.
The other thing is, like, you can always, if you really want them to feel a certain way about an NPC, TV shows do it best because they have a very limited runtime. Like, it's a 23-minute episode, but they need to get the people to be invested in this thing. So, like, they have a daughter's family die in front of her, and then the people are like, "Oh my God, we now need to care for you." Like, you can always lean on those like little cheat codes of how you introduce the character to make sure that there's a certain emotion evoked, as long as you aren't GMing for psychopaths.
Yeah.
But if you are GMing for psychopaths, you can take them aside and say, "Hey, look, just please love this character. I wrote an adventure. We want to have fun. Let's play the adventure I wrote. Don't kill the daughter whose family just died," or whatever, if you have murder hobos.
And don't be afraid to be like, hey, what do you guys want to see in your NPCs? Like, what would be exciting for you in the world? Because that's...
For them all to be dead.
Yeah. My father's watch.
Death. I want to see death in my NPCs.
I'm a cleric of Kellamvor.
More
All I care
questions.
about is
Hands
murder.
up.
That guy.
Yeah, right here.
So, no matter how heavily into like role playing your games generally are, especially in D&D, it's end up with lots of dice rolling.
Yeah.
How do you deal with players who have like dyscalculia and have trouble with numbers? Like when it comes to those really crunchy moments in the game.
Yeah, I've actually DM'd for a player who does. Have you guys as well? We can
Yeah.
all talk about it. Oh my God. So I had a player at Brewery Games who had that, and I did the quick math for them. If it was in a crunch moment and I didn't want them to lose I asked them beforehand. I didn't just but I was like, hey, do you mind if I do that? Is that something that's helpful for you? If not, you can work it out. And they were like, I would love for that. So in crunch moments when it was like the peak apex, but I also told them, and this was, they told me it was helpful for them, is I was like, if you are in those moments and you want to give it like some narrative space, you're not ruining the game like by taking your time to get it right, because a lot of times it just makes people like, oh God, gotta know, I need to, and it makes it almost even better, even if you succeed or fail, either way. Like, so I try to, the best way is just like, don't worry about it. Like, because whenever you have anything like that, even a brain fart at the table, everyone can relate to it. You feel like, oh, every spotlight is on you and you've messed up the game for everybody else. You never have. It happens to everyone always. I mean, like, I still, every now and again, I get like basic addition wrong. I'm like, oh, so that's a 17. And my player's like, no, that's a 3. And I'm like, God, I don't know how this happened.
Really wrong.
Yeah, it's, so... the big thing is, it's not whatever is talk about it, find the solution, but know also that like not everybody's eyes are on you. I mean, they are, but they're not in damn it.
So they are, but they're not.
Yeah.
Historically, I usually will talk to my players if they have any kind of like processing issue or anything like that beforehand, because I want to know where their barriers are. I know some people who want to figure it out and they want to take that time. I know others who are like, please just tell me what the number is. Do not make me be in this situation. So I'll usually talk to them, but normally the way that I've handled it historically is while they're calculating something, I move to what another player is doing while they make those calculations, while they do that adding. And then they'll interject with, hey, by the way, it was this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So this happens and basically, because technically, especially if you're doing combat, technically all the turns are happening at the same time. You can move on and have it all resolve at the same time, like a Magic the Gathering play. It doesn't have to be, okay, you did this and then this happened and then you did this. You can sort of distract the table while you let them calculate what they're doing.
Yeah, it's so good.
That's a great answer. Yeah, I love that.
Oh, thank you.
There's two things. One is piggybacking on that. They can call whatever action they want to call whenever they want to call it, as long as it's player turns. And then you can be like, okay, so you are swinging your battle axe at the guy and you get a 17, that's a hit. And they're like, I would like to cast Fireball. And you're like, yes, cast Fireball. And then they're like, all right, I'm going to roll all my damage dice and start calculating now. So that 2 turns from now, when it's mine, we're good. Another option, I know this isn't going to work for everyone because I sometimes have math problems, but I'm also a very tactile person. I love rolling dice. An app, if they're not as attached to rolling dice, will calculate everything for them immediately. Yeah. And then, like, you still see the dice like bouncing around and things like that, but then they don't have that pressure of doing the math themselves because the app is doing all of that work for them.
I'll chime in real quick and just kind of the piggyback that we're all trying to kind of say, and I will speak for everybody because I can do that. I'm a lawyer. Is talk to the player ahead of time. It could even be ahead of each session. Say, hey, I might have a moment where you're going to be spotlighted today. How do you want to handle this kind of stuff? Because at the end of the day, as a GM, we feel that impetus of we're the narrator, we're the referee of the game, and we need to have an answer for everything. And the actual answer is whatever that player is most comfortable with doing, which seems like a frustrating answer at a panel, but whatever they're most comfortable with doing, instead of legislating, this is my solution to this problem, say, what is your preferred solution, and how can we incorporate that in through all these different methods?
Quite honestly, that's a good answer to a lot of my player is having trouble with X.
Yeah.
Communicate with your player, see what they are comfortable doing about it, and then take what we say purely as examples and not as like, no, the people at MAGFest said we have to do it this way.
He was a lawyer. The other thing is, if they're newer, a lot of times they don't want to speak up on this. So this is a really good time as a GM that you can just step in and have that conversation, and then also provide some options that you heard at MAGFest or wherever, forums, etc. So other questions. I've called every question from this side of the room, so I'm going to go over here. Yeah. Oh God.
How do you engage your players and with like consequences? Narratively speaking, if they're not really paying too much to the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, how do you engage your players if they're more combat-oriented than narrative-oriented?
Murderous bastards.
So how do you engage them through the narrative specifically is what you're asking, right?
Like, there's like kind of larger plot piece going on.
Yeah.
Or like adventure to adventure.
Yeah. So... Yeah, I'm both the best and the worst GM to ask this to, and Josh as well, since we GM'd at breweries for such a long time. We have players who, can't remember what we did last time for good reason, and we made sure that they drunk. Took a cab home.
We have players who show up and are like, it's my first night here. Yeah. Is there something special going on in the game? And I'm like, I'm not going to give you the whole plot. Yeah. Don't worry about it. We run those games like Monster of the Week shows.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, it's my first night here, and you're like, you were here last week.
That's happened too. So the big thing with GMing that way, what you learn really quick is like, make your story beats big. And then when you're like, okay, this is big, tip it up a little bit more, make it bigger, like make it so big where it's like it is very in your face, you have to deal with it, and it creates I can't remember, it was the Pathfinder creators. I was talking to them and we were talking about writing stories, and one of the things that they said when they have to do their one shots, specifically for like they have a branded, it's not Adventure League, it's their brand, but whatever, it's Pathfinder. They have a writing spine. That's what they talked about, and they have a book about it, and I don't remember it, I'm the worst, but they have a writing spine, and the narrative of the big arcing narrative of the game is on the spine, but the players are engaging with these ribs off of the spine. And if you can make those ribs engaging enough, then the players eventually move into the spine. But if not, as long as you're hitting these big beats, they can get rewarded for what if they glean that there's a spine of it, or they're just enjoying the fact that they're hitting these big beats. And I think, you can never tell your players, how to enjoy your game, but you can, again, we go back to like reward a player who's like, wait a second, you're the great granddaughter of the BBG. And you're like, oh yeah, Plaid Cat. Yeah.
That's a callback.
So that's my is like, make your narrative, if you really, don't be subtle. If they're not getting into it, don't be subtle. Just make it really in their face. And then if they lean into it, great. If they don't, keep going bigger. Just, eventually blow up the world. I don't know. They're going to notice this now. Yeah.
Generally, I might actually also be one of the worst people in a different way than Alon about this. Make the narrative consequences also combative. Do things like, oh, you didn't notice that, they're at this fancy ball and this woman's been crying and you made a point to mention her, and they were like, psh, okay, and like continued on to find their next murder victim. Make it so that the combat encounter that was pretty balanced now has like 5 guards because she saw them sneak in and went be like, I have no reason to be nice to these people. I'm going to snitch. Yeah. Have any kind of setup like that. If they are like being really haughty to like a wizard, cool. Your weapon's cursed now, homie. Enjoy disadvantage on all rolls against undead. Like anything like that you can work into the thing that they do pay attention to can usually help. Now, that being said, make sure you're not punishing your players for playing a game different than what you want. Right. Sometimes DMs and, GMs, because I don't want to be just D&D exclusive. Sometimes GMs and players have bad experiences with each other because they're not a good match, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the GM or the players.
Install a rival adventuring party who does all of your adventures exactly the way you wanted them done. Make them dicks.
Make them get all the cool loot from like all the adventure stuff. They're like, oh yeah, this +5 sword with an angel spirit inside of it. Yeah, I got this from a lich I murdered after he poisoned a whole village. And they're like, oh, that village we passed that everybody was sick. I could have had that sword.
The cowboy yelled, somebody poisoned the water hole, and I moved on.
Gary was here. Ash is a loser. I have a player in one of my campaigns that I've been running for 1.5 years at this point. Like, we've had 50 sessions, which is a dream. But who led off like this. And what I did was I gave him stakes, because I found the reason that I found, and this isn't going to be the answer for every single one, the reason I found that he was murdering everything was because he wasn't engaged in the story. And so I gave him a reason to be engaged, and that was I gave his character a family that he didn't remember. And he had to figure out, one, why he didn't remember, and then figure out why his child wanted his rapier. And it gave him some stakes to actually go in. Now, also, one of the things that I love is kind of add consequences. Like, if you're going to go in and you're just going to murder everybody and you're not engaging with the story, that's not what people do in life. That's literally illegal.
What?
Murdering people is illegal for the second time in one panel. And so add consequences, because not everybody's going to be super chill with that.
Yeah. Eventually, once you make your story beats big enough, it's just your players being assholes.
Yeah.
Hey guys, like, I run almost completely improv adventures for almost everything I do. Whenever I have a character idea or whatever, I build out the room for them to interact with, and I build it out not exactly know where I'm going with it, but the things that I've built out, I'm like, okay, you guys can engage with this. And they ask for more, then I like, okay, delete that, swipe that. Here's the more stuff that's in the room. And eventually they choose what they're going to engage with. But as a GM, like the world they're in is only the world you've given them. Yeah. So they can't, if you don't give them things that you don't want them to engage with, they can't engage with it. Right. So at some point, it's definitely a give and take because you want them to be engaged. You don't want them to pick things just because it's there. But at some point, it's like, I only have so much, whether you have a written adventure in front of you or whether you're creating your own. So, hopefully they realize that and they realize they're going to have a really fun adventure if they just ask the woman why she's crying.
Take away all their weapons and say that the only way they can attack things or people is if they draw it from the deck of many things, and that'll take care of it real quick.
Yeah, make it Undertale. They can't actually fight.
Yes, you had a question so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna kind of branch off of what you mentioned, that improv mentioned like I'm looking for a new player that never DM, and the main reason is that I'm petrified of having to improv, and I just feel like I'm not capable of like that quick kind of on-ball thinking.
Yes.
Is there a way you can practice that?
My God, is there ever? I've taken improv classes for a long time, and you can too.
For just 5 payments of $99.99.
To me, no. So I have an improv mentor who's super awesome, Quid. You can look up Quinn Fontaine at Quinn Fontaine Studios. Trans masked man who creates inclusive improv environments. If that's not your thing that you're looking for, there's an infinite numbers. If you're not comfortable with jumping into an improv class because it's intimidating, because there's people like me who talk really fast and seem very confident, it's all ruse. But if it is still intimidating ruse, this, I don't know, it might sound weird, it might not, whatever. I sing in the shower. I create my own characters when I'm cooking. When no one's around. I do it to my cat all the time, and my cat just continues to look like she wants to murder me. It hasn't changed anything in our relationship. So if that is the biggest aspect that is preventing you from GMing, the best way to do it is just like anything. GMing is a skill. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. If it's too much to jump into a game and GM a game right away, the easiest way is to buy an adventure, or I say buy because you should support your small businesses that create adventures.
Like Alpha Comics.
And I say not steal because my lawyer's here. But the easiest way is to buy or find a free one to run, and that way you have everything there. And talk to your players beforehand and be like, hey, I'm not super comfortable with deviating from this. So if I say, you're out of bounds, we all grew up playing video games where there was an out of bounds thing, and we learned, okay, I have to turn around, and so people, they can do it. So find where that line of comfort is, whether it's creating characters and improving with your cat, or whether it's taking classes, or whether it's just kind of doing a very structured game and slowly breaking down those fears or barriers. That would be awesome.
If you don't want to do things like spend money on an improv class or jump into a place where people like Alon are cartwheeling around all day. Literally, yes, literally. It's like a wheel with spokes that's on those old-timey bikes. It's terrifying. You can do a thing that I call building the tracks while the train is going. Eventually, you will develop improv skills. That just happens with DMing. I did not start out good at it. I don't even know that I still am. But you can create small chunks of adventure that are disparate. Okay, here's a cool haunted mansion thing. Here's a cool magic forest. And then whichever way they go, take the thing that you already prepped and click it in front of them. Have it all scaled that way and just piece it in front as they're going, because that way you have it prepared. And trust me, if you do this, your players think you're ready for anything. They're like, God, they've prepared for everything, when it's like, I have 3 things in this bag and no one must know.
I have a bag of tricks.
But if you had a couple of ideas and they took a left turn, well, cool. They're going to the Sacred Forest. They're not going to go to that cool, snowy mountain Yeti encounter. Cool. You've got that snowy mountain Yeti encounter for a little bit longer just in your back pocket. And just doing that usually lays enough of a groundwork that the improv you have to do around it isn't huge. It's not big plot improv. It's little, who is this NPC's name? Charles. And if that kind of thing like freezes you up, having like a little list that you can just pin of NPC names, and even just have like a name, race, and job, and just kind of okay, cool. This is Chachki. He is a gnome farrier, and you're ready to go. Yeah. And that way it looks like you're incredibly prepared, and it lets you build the improv skills while lying about having improv skills. And DMing is just lying, guys. That's all it is.
Allegedly. The one of the things that I'll say, these are all great things. If you want to look for prefab adventures and stuff like this, some great free resources. You can always check out DM Dave, who has a paid Patreon but does release content for free and has really detailed stuff. And also Monkey DM on Reddit. They both have great resources. They oftentimes have like adventure paths that you can follow. Look at their stuff and adapt it to your own. Spend some time on it. Also, the subreddit for DM Academy is super useful. So check all those resources out. You'll find some stuff there. But also, frankly, when it comes to improving, it's really just making stuff up. Like, I was recording an episode for my podcast 2 days ago, and somebody said, "Oh, this poor old man that's dying in front of me. What's his name?" I'm like, "Crap, I didn't come up with a name for that guy." And I looked down, and there was something in front of me that said "Play Live." And I was like, "His name is Yaleev." And that's where you got it.
Yeah, and I'll say there's a random generator for everything now. So that's super nice. If you, for whatever reason, your mind's just not working, it happens to all of us for days. You can just pull up like infinite random generator. Oh, what are we eating? Brussels sprouts and cheese nips. I don't know either. It must be cultural.
But the Brussels sprouts explode.
Yeah. So, whatever tools, there's so many tools out there. I will say also, tomorrow, same Spider Time, same Spider Place, we're running a panel on, it's either tomorrow or it's Saturday. We're running a panel on creating award-winning adventures. We've created award-winning one-shots. And so hopefully...
That is tomorrow.
It is tomorrow. Thank you. So hopefully you can steal some more things from there if you want to write your own. If not, find what you're comfortable with. Does that answer your question? I love new GMs. It's weirdly enough, it's one of the it saved me, and I say that in a very profound way. So I hope that if you do decide to jump into it, that you absolutely love it. It'd be great.
A super quick point on that: take note cards and go to one of those resources we were talking about, and just take the things you want to use in your adventures, and then keep them on note cards in front of you, so that they can be like, "Man, it's really quiet in these woods." And you're like, "It is quiet in these woods." Flip, 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 flip. Bugbears are happening now.
Yeah, I just realized this too.
Hey!
Yeah. It's no, and the other thing, I just realized this too. We have a GMs helping GMs help forum on our Discord, Goblins and Growlers. What's our Discord link?
bit.ly/Goblin Discord.
No, this is too soon for this.
You can find
it
at goblinsandgrowlers.com. Also, message any of us at any time, any hours. We're just sitting there waiting for D&D questions.
Please, it validates me.
Yeah.
I am not doing that, but you can still feel free to try.
Yeah.
I'll give you my work cell.
Yes, we have a question here.
For people who are having issues with bonding with their character or getting on the same level on non-combat traits, intelligence, whatever, they say, "I can't figure out this puzzle, but I think my character could." Got you?
So the question is, people that are struggling with their character has a trait that they don't feel that they share. So, for example, they have high strength, but the player is like, "Oh no, gyms suck," or something like that. How do you run a campaign for that person? Right.
A quick and easy example for intelligence. They're like, "I'm 99% sure my character is smart enough to know how these balls go in these slots to create the doorway we need."
Yep.
And all you have to do is roll.
Yeah, check.
Just be like, roll an intelligence check. Do you want to roll investigation? Investigation's an intelligence check. And they're like, "I think I will roll an investigation." And then just go with it, because you have control of that narrative. their character probably, I'm going to say this right now, I never know like 2/3 of the stuff that my character was doing like 3 days ago. So I constantly have to be like, hey, Alex, I know this was like 3 days ago in game. I feel like Solinar would probably remember the name of the person who stabbed him. I don't, because for me, that was a month and a half ago. So could you remind me? Like, having stuff like that is always really helpful. And throwing the dice into it as well makes it very easy to be like, just do a check. Because your character has the skill set and the points to be really good at that. And that's what that represents.
I was going to say, and basically the way that I look at it is, in a game, if there is a chance of failure, make them roll. And that is, even if the character has to figure something out, that character might, they have everything in front of them, but they still might not put it together. So if there's a chance of failure, have them roll.
You can also, if you're worried about handing them the answer to the dungeon, because sometimes that can be kind of frustrating, you can give them a huge hint that their character has figured out. And if that is what like triggers the other player to go, oh, wait, if this is this, then this is this, it still feels like they've succeeded on their own, but it does bring into effect their character's intelligence or wisdom or whatever they don't feel like they share.
I would say too, just always be conscious of the fact that you can work with that player to give them the confidence to be their character. So what I mean by that is, like, if there is a puzzle and they're fitting these balls in the slots, and they're like, you know what, I'm rolling the balls, and you can be like, yeah, that was it. There's gyros inside of them. You've rolled the ball, like you figured it out. And a lot of times you can build because you have control over the world. There's no answers that aren't your answers that you've decided. Right. You can help people get the confidence to play that character that they want to be, especially if they get frustrated. Like that's the most, as a GM, that's the most frustrating thing is when your player is frustrated because they can't find that groove with their character. Just give them some positive feedback.
I had a party stand in front of a door marked "Don't overthink it" for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Arguing about how best to open it. It was unlocked.
That's amazing.
I want to see real quick how many questions. If everybody could put your hands up that still has questions.
1, 2,
3. We'll take our times with these. We got 12 more minutes. I know you have to go early, so
I'll go like very close. I have a panel right after this. If you guys want to just sprint with me to it.
Yeah.
Lightning round.
Okay. No, right here. Yes. You. Who's questioning if it's you?
The Huel shirt.
Yes. What advice would you have for a player who wants to find that balance between playing their chaotic, eccentric character and not being an insufferable asshole?
God, it's such a fine line. It really is. The best way to do it truly is to talk to the party as a person, buy them coffee or something, and be like, hey, where's the line for you guys? And try to, because since it is collaborative storytelling, even if you cross one person's line, you kind of ruin their game, and you never want to be that person. You really, and sometimes it's hard to tell because some people don't wear their emotions on their sleeve, and you don't know. So ask people, be like, hey, I really want to bring some chaos, but I want to bring it in a way that helps our thing drive forward. The other thing is talk to your GM, because there is ways for them to have chaos drive a plot forward and not just derail things. So example would be if you really want, you're like, I'm a pyro, so I'm lighting this on fire or whatever. And people are like, God, this is not fun. But if you're a pyro, and so when a dragon comes, you're trying to harvest the fire of the dragon or something. There's ways to work in whatever your chaotic elements or that you want in your character. There's ways to work it in narratively. So just unfortunately, it's a lot of communication to make sure that you balance the assholery with the fun. But you can do it, and it's a super fun trope to be if you can ride the line.
And keep it in mind there as well that chaotic eccentric is not the alignment chart. I hate alignment charts, but there's actually a really good reason to talk about them. It's chaotic, good, neutral, evil, at least in the D&D 5e system. And so that character has a moral compass somewhere, and all their actions have consequences. So if they go around being chaotic and just murdering everybody, burning down the inn, all that stuff, that slides them towards evil. And then all of a sudden at evil, devils take notice and they start making deals for their souls and stuff like that. And that binds them into a different path. So
Wheel of Fire is a really great resource also because they force characters to have a goal. Like you're always, whatever you do, you're working it towards like what you value as a player or as a player character. I mean, so it is nice. Like when you are creating your chaotic character, they can't just be chaotic for chaotic sake. Like there's a reason. Like my dad didn't love me or whatever. That's why I do it. But you can
just
find
real life.
Yeah, you can find
I'm
anyone.
kidding, I love you, Dad.
Too real, Alon.
Give every character a reason to be part of the party, as well as a reason to be on adventures. Because then, anytime they're like, "Yeah, I did set an orphanage on fire, but you remember last week? I remembered your birthday."
I did it for you, boo boo.
Brings them together.
Thing number one, talk to your DM. Usually the DM will be like, okay, so here's the stuff I can let you do that would be really cool, because that's really fun for DMs. Thing number two, remember that you're, from a player as a character standpoint, your character has something that is keeping them there. They have a reason that they are going forward. People don't normally do things that jeopardize the reason they're doing something big, like moving to Suffolk or going on an adventure to slay a dragon that'll probably kill them. Like they'll have a reason that will tamp down their sort of instinctual must burn orphanage.
Right.
Yeah, you can give them bigger orphanages, being goals. Okay, so a question. There was one back here. Yes.
Just for, like, a lot of new players that are just like not really understanding the game very much. Like everyone that I like, it's kind of hard to explain, but
Sure.
all of the team and the campaign are basically new to the game.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's like 5 of them. Really hard.
Yeah. So let me make sure. I'm going to ask your question back to you, and you're going to confirm that I've got it right or deny that I've got it wrong. I know. Yeah. So you're asking, like, you have a bunch of new players, and they don't have a big understanding of the game, and you're asking, how do I engage them in the game, even though they don't have like a huge understanding in it? Yes. That was a yeah with a question mark. Yes. Okay. I will say, like, I've GM'd bachelor parties where nobody there knew anything about the game. They just were like, hey, this would be a fun thing to do, so we hired you to make it happen. Which it's always
Sounds
difficult.
like a bachelor party.
It is a bachelor, but
That sounds really fun.
my big thing is I like when I have newer players and they haven't read the player's handbook, they haven't done anything, they haven't prepared anything. I take it on myself if I want to make that game and make it happen, or I bring some pre-generated character sheets. I talk to them beforehand and be like, hey, what do you like? Stabby? Do you beat? Do you magic? What sounds exciting to you? Shooting things? Okay, we can work with that. And you find like what is the thing that motivates them and gets them excited, and then they start to be like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. Like now I'm playing the thing that I want to do, and then I will like try to get the campaign. I will let them kind of give me the things that they want to do. Do you want to slay a dragon? Okay, let's go slay a dragon. Like, and unfortunately, when you have all new players who aren't super invested yet, you kind of take a back seat in that situation, and you're trying to find the things that get them invested, like get that spark that you had that made you like read the player's handbook at night when you weren't supposed to be awake with a flashlight under your covers, and then when you hear your parents up the stairs, you go and you hide it underneath your mattress, which is what I did because they thought it was satanic. But whatever you want to do with it, you got to get them to have that spark in that moment where they like engage, and a lot of times it's just like trying to figure out what that is going to be for them.
Yeah, basically have patience, take time to explain the game to them. I GM for a lot of new players typically, and what I would not do is recommend they watch Critical Role, because then you will just feel inadequate. Don't do that.
First of all, again, and not to besmirch Critical Role, make sure you have reasonable expectations for yourself and your players is what I
Exactly.
think you were going for.
That's what I meant.
Instead of just like, screw Matt Mercer.
I love Matt Mercer.
But The big thing is, as you guys are going forward and you are all learning the game together, both the DM and the players, make calls for what makes sense as a DM in the moment. Just make a house rule call in the game and then look it up later after you guys have wrapped up the game, and that won't slow it down. It'll keep things moving. D&D's pretty intuitive. A lot of times you'll make a call like, this is what would make sense, and then you go back and check and you're like, oh, what do you know? That was what the rules said too. Perfect. Just make it in the moment fun. Don't worry about making it technically correct. I have absolutely come up to my players and been like, hey guys, so remember that rule that I used that was the do or die moment? That was from 3.5 and I forgot. Sorry. And you keep it, that's what happened in the story. Just keep it moving. Yeah. Figure out the technicals later.
Yes.
And kind of in that vein, don't be afraid to peel off some of the more complex parts of things like D&D.
Initiative sucks.
You don't need all the skills in order to be like, you're doing strength stuff, roll a strength check. You're doing intelligence stuff, roll an intelligence check. You can just do stats-based rolls for a couple sessions until everybody's like, I think I understand what sorts of things are for what sorts of things now.
Are those helpful tips to you?
But one thing about what we said originally, like about how what they are interested in doing, the problem is when we explained it to them, we only used a few examples.
Yeah.
And originally when we were designing their characters with them, they all were elf wizards.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
My God.
Yeah.
They're a boy band. That sounds amazing.
No.
One of them
Yeah.
wanted to be a vampire for no reason.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of times.
Sounds like they were in sync.
It's hard. Okay, so this is an improv thing, but a lot of times when you have a ball of clay and somebody says turn it into something, you're like, oh my God, infinite possibilities. I'm overwhelmed. Like I don't know what to turn this into. But if you say, hey, here's the 5 things that it turns into, then all of a sudden you're like, oh well, this one looks nice for me. I'm going to do this. So instead of saying like it's a game of imagination and thus you infinite possibilities, sometimes just laying out like, hey, here's some things that we can do. To make it a little bit easier for them so that they don't all gravitate towards like, well, well, this guy chose that, so I'm going to choose that.
Yeah.
Just, lay it, smorgasbord it.
Smorgasbord. I was gonna.
Smorgasbord.
Yeah.
Also,
thank you.
don't be afraid to lean into the party of all elf wizards. That sounds like chaos, and it could be fun chaos if you get into it. But
Like
only
Witcher
if that's
chaos.
also fun for you.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
talk more. We have one more, maybe one more question. We'll rapid fire. I think it was over here. Yes.
Yeah.
Built in the past, both as a GM and as a player, with players who are essentially getting anxious in the life and death situations and causing a lot of acting out in ways that usually they would be totally reasonable about. That can make it very hard to communicate. If you talk to them afterwards and they're level-headed, of course.
Yeah.
But in the moment, they can
Are they acting out in game or out of game?
kind of
Both. Okay. Cool.
as they're playing until they're very tense.
Yeah.
I'll chime in real quick and just say I would have a conversation. The answer to all of these questions is communication. Have a conversation with them, and one of the things I love about 5e, and then I'm going to bolt to my next panel.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about 5e is that in general, D&D as 5e as a system, death is so squishy. Like, yeah, you're dying. Okay, you maybe you actually had 3 death saving throws. Then yeah, okay, well now you're in the afterlife. What are we doing here? Now we are in hell, and Zariel has our souls. What's going on?
Death of a character is only a consequence if you want it to be a consequence and you're playing that kind of super crunchy game where it's like, yeah, if you die, you die. But if that's something that makes your players so anxious that it's difficult to do with, just make death less of a, lessen the impact of death. There's so many ways to get resurrected. There's so many clerics. There's so many, however you wanna go about it. That can be in game. That's your solution. Out of game, it's talk to them and figure out kind of what is that anxiety stemming from, and hopefully they're level-headed enough where they're like, yeah, I did take that too far, and then you can talk about like, okay, well, how are we gonna make sure that doesn't happen in the future, and try different things out. Whether that's they say, well, just kill me immediately, and then I won't have the anxiety of it, or whatever.
And I've got to run.
Yes, thank you,
Yay,
Noah. Everybody
Noah!
clap. Noah has other panels. My lawyer friend. Don't high five him. No, there's no high fives. COVID. So
You can also remove death entirely as a consequence. One of the things that I have done historically with players who are very attached to their characters, like I had a roommate who threatened to evict me once if I killed their character. It's fair. I put him through a lot. What you can do, yeah, you didn't know that?
how much did you put in to make that fair?
We'll talk. Anyway, one of the things that I've historically done is when a character dies, they run into Kelemvor or an aspect of the Grim Reaper or something that you can do, and they're like, "You're not supposed to be dead yet. I can bring you back, but I'm gonna have to take something from you," and then put in a mechanical disadvantage. They get disadvantage on dexterity throws for the rest of the game. That way, it is still a consequence, but it is not game ending for your players. It might cause a lot less anxiety.
Yeah, it is. I'll say some of the best role play comes from like when you allow your character to fail too. And so sometimes like having talking to your players about, I mean, the most memorable stuff. You think about like all the things that you really remember from like stories and things like that. It's when players fail and then they overcome like the difficulties and they have the redemption of figuring out how to live their life in a different path than they ever saw before because of the failure. And it happens in real life too, which is why we like connect with it and empathize with it so much. So like there's a lot of different possibilities to lean into.
And most books have a critical wounds section. Use that instead of dying.
Or look up the two second edition one because those are fun.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Don't do that.
yeah,
You care for your players. You love them.
No more
Don't do that.
questions. And by no more questions, I mean jump onto the Goblins and Growlers Discord, goblinsandgrowlers.com, bit.ly/goblin Discord.
Yes.
Good.
You got it.
And you can ask any questions you want there. The other way to do it is just messaging us at Goblins and Growlers or Goblin Growlers at all social media. We have panels here at 7 tomorrow and here at 7 the day after tomorrow, Saturday. So you can also, and if you see us around, say hi and ask any questions that you have, or et cetera, et cetera. We're professional game masters, Goblins and Growlers, Alpha Comics and Games, Quid Pro Roll Podcast, and more things. I've not even hit everything, but
That's close enough.
yeah, we love you guys. And I can't believe MAGFest is happening. You guys are awesome. And thank you so much to the MAG staff.